The story I'm going to tell today is about an incident that occurred while Nyla was dating a man. Eventually, she decided to move in and live with him as husband and wife. However, because this man was perfect in every way, both in appearance and in his career, other women constantly interfered in their lives every single day. But then, one day, those women mysteriously died, prompting Nyla to investigate the true cause behind these events. Before we dive into our scary story, we would like to ask everyone to like and subscribe to support us in continuing to bring you more terrifying tales in the future. Let me take you back to around 1987. During that time, Nyla was considered one of the most attractive people in the village, which led many young men to pursue her. Among her admirers, Nyla took a liking to one man in particular, and they began seeing each other for about 3 to 4 months before Nyla moved in with him. For the next 2 years, Nyla never returned to visit her relatives. Then one day, out of the blue, Nyla showed up at her relative's house. She looked emaciated and her skin was darkened, prompting her relatives to ask what had happened to her. They wondered if Nyla had been overworked at her boyfriend's house. Nyla's response stunned everyone. She told them she had been cursed with black magic and was now preparing to become a nun. She invited her relatives to join the ceremony. Initially, Nyla seemed reluctant to share details, but her relatives gently persuaded her until she finally recounted her story. It all began when Nyla moved in with Ned, the man who had pursued her. Ned was known in the area as a nearly perfect man, desired by many women. Once Nyla became Ned's official wife, the other women who had their eyes on Ned started to express their displeasure. Ned ran a small construction supply store in front of his house, which Nyla took over after moving in, while Ned focused on his primary business. This arrangement gave those who disliked Nyla an opportunity to confront her directly. One such woman was Naomi, a widowed woman who had set her sights on Ned before Nyla came into the picture. When Naomi learned that Nyla had been officially introduced by Ned as his wife, she became openly hostile. One afternoon, while Nyla was arranging things in the store, Naomi's shrill voice could be heard from the front, saying things that were far from pleasant. After listening for a while, Nyla realized that Naomi was insulting her and even her parents. Unable to tolerate this, Nyla went to the front of the store to confront Naomi, leading to a physical altercation that passersby had to break up. This was the first but not the last instance of such conflict. Naomi returned a few more times, each encounter resulting in another fight. After 2 or 3 such incidents, Nyla told Ned about what had been happening while he was away. Ned was furious and wanted to take action against Naomi. However, Nyla explained that if Ned did anything, the trouble would never end, as she would still be the one tending the store and would continue to be targeted by Naomi. Nyla thought it best to report the matter to the police, and Ned agreed to follow her suggestion. But as everyone knows, the police only made a record of the incident, which didn't help at all because there was no further investigation. About 3 days later, Nyla heard that Naomi, her adversary, had died suddenly and inexplicably. Despite their conflicts, Nyla and Ned attended Naomi's funeral as fellow villagers. At the funeral, Nyla overheard people discussing Naomi's death. The discussion was initiated by Naomi's only niece, who had been at home and witnessed the event. She told the villagers that Naomi's death was unusual. 3 days before Naomi died, the niece saw many strange things. It started around early afternoon while she was playing a game on the 2nd floor of the house. She heard the sound of Naomi's car arriving. From the 2nd floor, she could see the road leading to the house and saw Naomi riding alone. but the shadow cast on the ground showed someone riding on Naomi's neck. When Naomi came into the house, she complained of neck and shoulder pain all day. After that strange incident, Naomi's niece often saw an eerie shadow flickering at the edge of her vision whenever she was near Naomi. The most frightening incident occurred the night before Naomi died. That night, while Naomi was applying cream to her face in front of the mirror, the niece saw the reflection of a tall, dark figure behind Naomi. The figure looked like a man whose body was completely charred, as if struck by lightning. Horrified, the niece hid under her blanket to avoid seeing the figure. Later that night, there were intermittent sounds of something falling on the roof of their house, loud enough to wake Naomi, who was irritated and drowsy. The niece, still awake and using her phone, heard Naomi shout, "What the hell is that noise?" After that, the strange sound ceased. However, Naomi tossed and turned unusually during the early morning hours, which was unlike her. The next morning, the niece found Naomi dead. She was lying with her eyes open, seemingly having struggled, as the blankets were scattered. Blood was also coming from Naomi's ears, mouth, and nose. This account led the villagers to believe that Naomi had been cursed with black magic. Hearing this, Nyla decided to forgive Naomi for what she had done to her. However, she was curious about who might have cursed Naomi. Considering that Naomi had mistreated many others besides her, it was plausible that someone else could have cursed Naomi, leading to her tragic end. After Naomi's funeral, Nyla hoped life would return to normal. However, it wasn't that simple. One Friday, shortly after the funeral, Nyla started receiving strange messages on her phone. The messages, sent by an unknown user, were filled with insults and hatred, as if they had an old grudge against her. Nyla didn't respond but simply blocked the sender. One day, a beautiful woman with blonde hair came to the store. She seemed sweet and polite and introduced herself as Pam. After that day, Pam began visiting the store more frequently, engaging in casual conversations with Nyla. Over time, they became friends, and Pam's visits helped alleviate Nyla's loneliness. As their friendship grew, Pam invited Nyla to have dinner with her. The invitation that day stemmed from a phone call Ned made to Nyla, informing her that he was tied up with a client meeting and probably wouldn't make it home in time for dinner. Upon hearing this conversation, Pam suggested that Nyla join her for dinner instead. At the restaurant, Pam asked Nyla what she wanted to eat. Nyla ordered chicken soup, while Pam ordered various dishes and generously paid for the meal. Their conversation was lively and enjoyable, like old friends catching up. 3 days later, Nyla had chicken soup again, this time because Ned, knowing it was her favorite, brought some home for her. However, this soup was not from the same restaurant where she had eaten with Pam. After consuming the soup twice, strange things started happening to Nyla. In middle of the night, Nyla saw a tall, dark shadow rush through her bedroom window and merge into her body. Immediately, she felt a searing pain in her stomach, as if someone was tearing her insides out. Nyla writhed in agony, and the next thing she remembered was regaining consciousness to find Ned carrying her out of the bedroom. As they passed the household altar, Nyla felt a burning sensation, like being scorched by fire, and screamed in pain. That night, Nyla witnessed something extraordinary. Ned seemed to know how to handle the situation. He placed her on the floor, went to fetch a banana, and forced her to eat it. Interestingly, Ned always kept bananas at home, often buying more even when the old ones went uneaten and spoiled. It seemed that there were always bananas in the house. Ned returned with a banana, broke it in half, and insisted that Nyla eat it. Surprisingly, after consuming the banana, her condition seemed to improve. Ned then instructed Nyla to repeat after him, leading her in chanting unfamiliar incantations. He clasped his hands in prayer and continued chanting, then gave Nyla the remaining banana to eat. Within minutes of eating the banana, Nyla vomited a large amount of dark liquid and immediately felt drained and fainted. Nyla regained consciousness the following morning. Feeling weak but determined to understand what had happened, she got out of bed and went to find Ned. She found him cleaning up her vomit from the previous night, collecting it onto a strange piece of cloth. Nyla watched silently, too confused to speak. Once Ned finished, he carried a basin filled halfway with water, recited a chant aloud, "May it return the way it came," and placed the soiled cloth into the basin. Curious and confused, Nyla asked Ned what had happened the previous night. Ned replied briefly, "You were poisoned," then explained further that Pam had secretly put a poison known as cursed potion into her food during their dinner. Nyla was puzzled, as the effects had only manifested the night before, despite having eaten the food days ago. Ned clarified that the poison doesn't kill immediately. The initial dose merely sets the stage, making the victim a target for malevolent spirits. If the victim consumes the same food again, the spirits start to attack. After his explanation, Ned assured Nyla that he had reversed the black magic, sending it back to Pam. This revelation horrified Nyla, leading her to suspect that Ned might have caused Naomi's death as revenge. When Nyla directly confronted Ned about Naomi, he remained silent. From that day on, Pam never returned to the store, and Nyla had no idea what had happened to her. Nyla continued to run the store as usual, but became more cautious, recognizing the terrifying capabilities of her partner. She started to question her feelings for Ned and wondered if there were other reasons she was in love with him. Driven by suspicion, Nyla decided to search for answers. She waited until Ned left for work and then began to explore different parts of the house. Her first target was the meditation room, where Ned spent hours each day. Inside, she found a large altar with a Buddha statue and beautifully arranged flower vases. The room was filled with the scent of incense. On a golden tray in front of the altar lay a yellow prayer book. She flipped through it but found no incantations related to black magic. Everything in the room seemed normal, contrary to her expectations of a sorcerer's lair. Next, Nyla decided to search the bedroom she shared with Ned. Despite being a familiar space, she had never examined it closely. She checked under the pillows, inside drawers, and in every conceivable nook and cranny but found nothing suspicious. Feeling discouraged, Nyla was about to give up, but when she heard a rat scurrying above the ceiling. This prompted her to remember the attic, often used for storage but possibly serving as a ritual space for someone practicing black magic. Resolute, Nyla decided to investigate the attic, hoping to uncover the secrets it held. When she went up to the room, Nyla was startled by what she saw before her. The door was covered in symbols that looked like talismans. Summoning her courage, Nyla opened the door and saw a table with various objects on it. These objects were related to black magic and sorcery. Although Nyla didn't recognize many of them, she could tell they were likely used for dark rituals. The atmosphere in the room was incredibly eerie. Even though Nyla was alone, she felt as if she wasn't, as if there were many eyes watching her every move. Suddenly, she received a call from Ned, almost as if he knew she had discovered something. The first thing Ned said when she answered was to get out of there immediately because she had just released the evil spirits he had been keeping confined. Before Nyla could respond, She heard whispers in her other ear. These whispers were a mix of male and female voices, speaking so softly she couldn't understand what they were saying. The wooden floor around her creaked with mysterious footsteps, even though no one was visible. Amid the chaos, the door slammed shut with a loud bang, and when Nyla tried to open it, she felt an unseen force pushing against it from the outside. Suddenly, she felt someone's breath on the back of her neck, though she didn't dare to turn around. Then, something cold touched her back, and she lost consciousness. When Nyla regained consciousness, she found herself back in her bedroom with Ned sitting beside her. Once she awoke, Ned confessed the truth about Naomi's death, Pam's disappearance, and that he had cast a love spell on Nyla. Ned believed that his past wrongdoings had come back as karma, revealing everything to Nyla. After that night, Ned asked to part ways with Nyla. He also insisted that if he died, Nyla should become a nun for a year. If she didn't, the black magic within her would cause her to wither away and eventually die. Nyla then returned to her parents' house for about a month before hearing the news that Ned had passed away. The villagers said he died of tuberculosis, but Nyla knew the real cause was not what they thought. Not long after Ned's death, Nyla's health began to deteriorate rapidly. Despite seeing doctors and taking medication, her condition didn't improve. She decided to become a nun as Ned had advised. This was why she invited her relatives to her ordination ceremony in the first place.